Margaret is 68, and she showers every single morning. Fresh towel, soap, clean clothes straight from the drawer. And yet sometimes by late afternoon she notices something. Not a strong smell. Not sweat. Exactly. Nothing anyone else has ever mentioned. Just different. On her shirt collar. On her robe. On the pillowcase. Something that doesn't quite match what she remembers about herself 20 years ago. So she does what almost anyone would do. She scrubs a little harder the next morning. Maybe she switches soap. Maybe she showers twice. And it doesn't quite solve it. Here's the question worth asking. What if the problem was never that she wasn't clean enough? Let me give you the short answer right now, and then spend the rest of this video showing you why it's true. Body odor isn't simply sweat sitting on dirty skin. Much of it forms later, when compounds already on your skin interact with the microbes living there and with oxygen in the air. A shower removes what's on your skin right now. It cannot stop your skin from producing more, all day, after you've dried off. And as you age, the ingredients in that chemistry change. That's the whole answer. Margaret's hygiene didn't slip. Her skin's chemistry moved. Now let me show you exactly what changed, because the details are far more interesting than the summary. By the end, you'll know where body odor actually comes from, what shifts in aging skin, the strange molecule researchers found decades ago, why an age-related scent is not necessarily an unpleasant one. There's a real study on that which surprises almost everyone. And when a new smell is worth mentioning to a doctor instead of scrubbing away. Let's start with the part almost everyone gets wrong. Most of us grew up with a simple model. You sweat, sweat smells. You wash the sweat off. That model is close enough to be useful and wrong in a way that matters more and more as you get older. Here's a better way to picture it. Think of your skin as a very small chemical countertop. Several ingredients get delivered to that countertop, continuously, all day long. Secretions from your sweat glands, oils and lipids from your sebaceous glands, shed skin material, microbes that live on your skin permanently and are supposed to be there, and oxygen from the air around you. Now here's the key idea. The smell is often not sitting inside any one of those ingredients, waiting to be washed off. Many characteristic body odors appear after those ingredients interact with each other. Skin microbes metabolize certain compounds in your secretions and produce new, more volatile ones. Some fatty compounds on the skin react with oxygen and change into something that smells different than what you started with. So sweating and smelling are not the same process. They're connected, but they're separate steps. And that explains something you've noticed your whole life without thinking about it. You don't have just one kind of sweat gland. The glands covering most of your body exist mainly for temperature control, and what they release is largely water and salts, fairly unremarkable to a nose. But in a few regions, the underarms, the groin, a second type of gland secretes something richer, proteins and lipids, compounds with more chemical substance to work with. Those secretions aren't strongly odorous when they arrive either. They become odorous when bacteria in those areas break them down into smaller, more volatile molecules. So it's not that your armpits are dirtier than your forearms, it's that they're where the richer raw material and the dense microbial population overlap. And those microbes are not invaders. A skin microbiome is normal, universal, and largely protective. The goal was never to sterilize your skin, and you couldn't if you tried. Now back to Margaret. When she showers, she cleans the countertop. Genuinely. The compounds sitting there right now go down the drain. But the countertop doesn't shut down when she turns off the water. Within minutes, glands start secreting again. The microbes that remain keep interacting with new secretions. Oxygen keeps doing what oxygen does. By 2 in the afternoon, that countertop has been running for 6 or 7 hours since the last time it was wiped down. Which means the interesting question isn't, did she wash? It's what's being produced on that countertop between showers. And by the time you reach your 60s, what's being produced there may be quite different from what it was decades earlier. If you find this kind of explanation useful, where we take something people are quietly embarrassed about and just explain the actual mechanism, subscribing helps more people find this channel. And I'd be curious in the comments, has anyone ever told you your scent changed, or is this something you noticed entirely on your own? That difference turns out to matter, and we'll come back to why. Now let's look at what actually changes. Older skin is not younger skin with wrinkles added on top. That's the mental model most of us carry, and it's not accurate. The physiology changes. The skin becomes a different working environment. Several things shift, and they shift differently from person to person. Sebum, the oily material your sebaceous glands produce, tends to change with age, in both quantity and composition. And the pattern isn't identical across the board. It differs by sex, by hormonal status, and considerably between individuals. I want to be careful here, because this is where health content usually invents a statistic. There is no single number like everyone produces 60% less oil at a certain age. What's better supported is that the composition of what's on the skin surface changes, and that's the part that matters for smell. Sweat gland function also changes. Many older adults sweat somewhat differently than they did at 35. Sometimes less, sometimes in a different pattern. The skin barrier changes too. Aging skin generally becomes drier and takes longer to repair itself after being disrupted. And the skin microbiome, the community of organisms living on you, is not fixed across a lifetime either. It shifts with skin conditions, moisture, medications, and the surface environment it lives in. That last point deserves one extra sentence because it's the link people miss. Microbes don't live on skin in the abstract. They live on a surface with a particular moisture level, a particular acidity, and a particular supply of lipids to feed on. Change that surface, and you change which organisms do well there and what they produce. Not dramatically, and not overnight. But the population that thrives on 68-year-old skin isn't necessarily identical to the one that thrived on the same person's skin at 35. Layer on top of that everything that becomes more common with age. Prescription medications, chronic conditions, diet changes, changes in activity. Now put all of that back onto the countertop metaphor, because this is the first real reveal of the video. Margaret uses the same soap she's used for years. She showers at the same time. She wears the same kinds of clothes, washed the same way. But the ingredients being delivered to her skin are no longer exactly the same ingredients that were delivered at 35. Different oils in different proportions, a different moisture environment, a somewhat different microbial community working on them. Same countertop, same cleaning routine, different chemistry. So a subtle change in scent is biologically plausible, and it doesn't require a hygiene failure. And that's not a hygiene failure. That's just skin doing what skin does at 68 rather than at 35. Now, one specific molecule made this whole topic famous, and its story is genuinely interesting. It's also the single most exaggerated fact on the internet about aging and smell. In 2001, a team of Japanese researchers published a study in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology. Their method was straightforward, and slightly funny when you picture it. They had people wear shirts for 3 days. Then they analyzed the odor from those shirts using gas chromatography and mass spectrometry, essentially separating a smell into its individual chemical components and identifying each one. They studied adults between 26 and 75 years old. Most of the odor compounds they measured didn't change much with age, but one did, and it stood out. It's called 2-nonenal, an unsaturated aldehyde, described in the paper as having a greasy, grassy odor. Here's the striking part. In that study, 2-nonenal was detected only in subjects aged 40 and older. It simply didn't show up in the younger samples, and when the researchers analyzed the lipids on the skin surface, they found something that fit together. A particular family of unsaturated fatty acids, the omega-7 group, increased with age. So did lipid peroxides, which are markers of fats that have been oxidized, and the amount of 2-nonenal in someone's body odor correlated with the amount of both. Then they tested whether a plausible chemical mechanism could actually produce it. In laboratory testing, they oxidatively broke down components of skin surface lipids, and 2-nonenal was generated specifically when those omega-7 fatty acids were degraded. So the proposed chain looks like this. Certain fatty acids accumulate on aging skin, oxygen reacts with them, and one of the products is a volatile compound that your nose can detect. Here's the analogy, and it is an analogy, not identical biology. Slice an apple and leave it on the counter. An hour later, it looks and smells different. The apple didn't get dirty. Nobody contaminated it. Oxygen simply changed its chemistry, and the result is something your senses register as different. Something loosely comparable is happening with certain fats on skin. Not decay, not filth. Chemistry proceeding normally in the presence of air. And this is exactly where the internet takes a real finding and turns it into a bad conclusion. Search this topic and you'll find 2-nonenal described as the old person molecule, along with soaps, supplements, and sprays, promising to eliminate it. So let's be precise about what that 2001 paper actually established. It was one chemical study. It identified one compound that tends to increase with age and proposed a plausible mechanism for how it forms. That's genuinely valuable science. It is not the same thing as proving that one molecule explains age-related body odor. Human body odor is a mixture, many volatile compounds, produced by several different processes, varying by person, by body site, by health, and by day. There is no single universal old person molecule, a product promising to eliminate age-related body odor simply by targeting this one molecule is claiming more certainty than this study provides. And there's a practical cost to that overclaim beyond the money. If you believe one molecule is the whole story, you'll go looking for the one product that removes it, and you'll overlook the simpler things that actually matter. It also frames a normal biological process as a contaminant to be eliminated. That framing is what turns an ordinary change into a source of shame, and the shame does more harm than the chemistry. Which brings us to the question you're probably already asking. If skin chemistry shifts with age, does that mean older people smell worse? That is not what one of the most interesting experiments on this actually found. In 2012, researchers at the Nonenal Chemical Senses Center published a study in PLOS ONE with a design that gets straight to the point. They collected natural body odor samples from 3 groups of donors: young adults, 20 to 30, middle-aged adults, 45 to 55, and older adults, 75 to 95. Then they gave those samples to 41 young evaluators, with no labels, and asked them to rate and sort them. The first finding matches intuition. There is something distinguishable about older adult body odor. Evaluators could pick it out, and they could correctly assign an age label to samples from the old age group, while they couldn't reliably do that for the other 2 groups. So yes, age-related odor appears to be real and detectable. Now, the second finding, which is the one almost nobody hears about, the samples from the oldest group were rated as less intense and less unpleasant than the samples from both the young and the middle-aged donors. Read that again, because the popular assumption is precisely backwards. In this experiment, the odor most associated with old age was the one young evaluators found least offensive. The middle-aged samples were rated as more intense than the young ones. 2 honest caveats, because this is a single study. It sampled underarm odor specifically. The same researchers noted that other sources, skin elsewhere, or breath could have different qualities. And 41 evaluators is a modest sample. This is one well-designed experiment, not the final word. But the direction of the result is the opposite of the stereotype, and that's worth sitting with. Different is not the same as worse. A change in your natural scent can simply be a normal consequence of changing skin chemistry. It does not automatically mean poor hygiene. It does not mean you're dirty, or neglecting yourself, or unwell. The stereotype, it turns out, may be considerably stronger than the smell. But there's a second strange problem here, and it complicates everything we've said so far. You may not be the best judge of your own scent. There are 2 separate reasons for that, and they stack on top of each other. The first is something everybody experiences, at every age: sensory adaptation. Your nose is designed to notice change, not to keep reporting constants. Walk into a house where someone is baking bread, and it's overwhelming for about a minute. 20 minutes later, you can barely detect it, while a visitor arriving at that moment notices immediately. Now consider that you're continuously exposed to your own scent, every hour of every day, with no break. You are the worst positioned person in the world to detect a gradual change in it. The second reason is more specific to aging. The sense of smell commonly declines with age. Both sensitivity, how faint a smell you can detect, and identification, the ability to name what you're smelling. The individual variation here is very large. Plenty of people in their 70s and 80s have an excellent sense of smell. This is a population pattern, not a personal verdict, and it isn't a diagnosis of anything. But put the 2 together and you get an unusual situation. Your skin chemistry may be shifting gradually, and your ability to notice familiar smells may also be shifting gradually, both slow, both invisible from the inside. Which leads to something worth saying plainly. If someone you trust gently mentions a change, a spouse, a daughter, a close friend, the instinct is to feel insulted or ashamed. Try to receive it as information instead. It's the one data point you genuinely cannot collect yourself. And that brings us back to Margaret, and the very natural mistake she made. Her response was to scrub harder, hotter water, stronger soap, sometimes a second shower. It's the logical response if you believe the problem is dirt. But we've now established that a lot of this isn't dirt at all. It's ongoing chemistry. So the harder scrubbing doesn't address the actual mechanism, and it can create a second, separate problem. Aging skin is generally more prone to dryness and irritation, and its barrier takes longer to recover once disrupted. Hot water, strong surfactants, and vigorous scrubbing all work against that barrier. You can end up with skin that's itchy, tight, flaking, or inflamed. And none of that was the original complaint. Let me be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying daily showering is harmful. For most people, it's perfectly fine. And for many, it's necessary and pleasant. Appropriate frequency depends on your activity level, how much you sweat, your climate, your skin condition, and frankly, your preference. The mistake isn't the daily shower. The mistake is this belief: if I notice any odor at all, I must attack my entire body more aggressively. The more sensible approach is targeted rather than uniform. Odor doesn't come equally from all skin. It concentrates where moisture collects and where certain gland types are dense: underarms, the groin, the feet, and skin folds. Those areas benefit from consistent, thorough attention. The skin on your shins and forearms does not need to be stripped daily to solve a problem that isn't happening there. So what actually makes sense? 4 things. And none of them require buying anything unusual. The first is to clean the areas that genuinely accumulate sweat and odor properly and consistently. Use a mild cleanser suited to your skin. Give those specific areas real attention. And skip the aggressive scrubbing. More friction isn't necessarily better cleaning, and on aging skin, it can cost you something. The second is to dry those same areas well afterward. This is the step people skip, and it's more useful than it sounds. Moisture that lingers in skin folds and between toes creates the conditions where microbial activity thrives. Drying thoroughly is genuinely part of hygiene, not an afterthought to it. The third is to think beyond your skin entirely. Fabric holds odor. Shirt collars, robes, pillowcases, towels, the inside of shoes, upholstered chairs you sit in daily. Margaret can be perfectly clean and still put on a robe that's been absorbing skin compounds for 2 weeks, and then conclude her body is the problem. So, launder frequently worn items regularly. Let towels dry fully between uses. Rotate shoes rather than wearing the same pair daily. And wash pillowcases often. I want to be careful not to overclaim here. I'm not going to tell you a particular fabric causes age-related odor that's not well established, whatever the marketing says. But that fabric holds odor, and washing removes it, is uncontroversial and practical. The fourth is to protect aging skin rather than fight it. If your skin is dry or irritated, a suitable moisturizer helps maintain comfort and supports barrier function. Applying it after washing, while the skin is still slightly damp, can help trap some of that water in the outer skin. To be honest with you, moisturizer is not a deodorant. It doesn't eliminate body odor. It addresses the problem that overwashing tends to create, which is a different problem worth not having. A quick note on products, since people mix them up constantly. Deodorant targets odor, generally by reducing odor-producing microbial activity or masking the smell. Antiperspirant reduces how much you sweat in the first place, using aluminum-based compounds. Different tools, different jobs. Some products combine both. Not everyone needs either one, and if your skin is sensitive, that's worth factoring in. And a short list of things I'd skip, because they show up constantly in this exact topic. Lemon juice, baking soda, and hydrogen peroxide applied directly to skin. Undiluted essential oils as a treatment. Aggressive antibacterial washing of your whole body. Chlorophyll supplements, and anything marketed specifically as a nonenal remover. The problem with all of these isn't only that the evidence is thin. It's that several of them irritate exactly the aging skin we just discussed protecting. There is no miracle fix here, and the absence of one isn't bad news. The mechanism doesn't call for a miracle. Now, an important boundary, because everything so far has been about gradual, normal change, and there's a category that's different. A scent that shifts slowly over years is a different situation from an odor that appears suddenly, or changes dramatically over weeks. I'm deliberately not going to give you a list of smells that supposedly indicate specific diseases. Those lists circulate widely. They encourage people to diagnose themselves and others, and they're not reliable enough to act on. What's actually useful is context. A new, persistent odor deserves attention, meaning a conversation with a clinician, particularly when it shows up alongside anything else. A new rash or redness, a wound that isn't healing, any drainage, fever, a marked change in how much you sweat, unexplained weight loss, or any other new symptom that appeared around the same time. Sudden or unexplained changes deserve more attention. A gradual change without other symptoms may be less urgent, but a persistent change you cannot explain is still worth discussing. It's also worth knowing that medications and certain medical conditions can influence body odor in some people. If a change began after starting a new prescription, that's a reasonable thing to raise with your doctor or pharmacist. Not to stop the medication over, just to ask about. And a specific one for anyone with diabetes or reduced sensation in the feet. Foot odor, accompanied by any skin changes, cuts, or sores, needs proper evaluation, because a foot problem there is not a hygiene problem. The principle is simple. The smell itself is not a diagnosis. It's one observation, and it means the most when it's paired with other things. So let's come back to Margaret. Her realization isn't that she found the right soap. There isn't one magic soap. It's something more useful and quieter than that. Her body didn't suddenly forget how to be clean. Her hygiene didn't slip. Her standards didn't fall. Her skin changed, the oils it produces, how much moisture it holds, the microbial community living on it, and therefore the chemistry happening on its surface between showers changed too. So her routine adapts. She stops attacking her skin every morning. She uses a gentler cleanser and pays real attention to the areas that actually matter. She dries carefully. She washes her robe and her pillowcase more often than she used to, and rotates her shoes. She moisturizes the dry patches on her shins that she'd been making worse. And she knows that if something changes suddenly, or comes with anything else, that's a question for her doctor, rather than a scrubbing problem. Does every trace of the change disappear? Maybe. Maybe not. That was never the promise, and pretending otherwise would be a lie. But it stops being a source of quiet shame, which was doing more damage than the smell ever was. Here's the whole chain of this video in one breath. Aging changes the skin environment. That changes which compounds end up on the surface. That changes how microbes and oxygen act on them. And that changes the mixture of volatile compounds reaching a nose. Not dirt, chemistry. A shower removes what's on your skin right now. It doesn't stop your skin from being skin for the rest of the day, and you wouldn't want it to. And that 2012 study is worth remembering, because it undercuts the entire anxiety this topic runs on. When researchers actually tested it, the odor associated with old age wasn't the one people found most unpleasant. It was the one they found least. Your scent is allowed to change. It changed through puberty. It continued changing through adulthood. And it can change again as you grow older. Different is not dirty.